Welcome to the Data Dojo podcast, hosted by Adam Massey and powered by the Aurek Group. Every week, we dive deep into the world of data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Here, we bring you conversations with the leading minds who are shaping the future of these cutting-edge fields. So get ready to unlock the secrets of data and discover the stories behind the algorithms.
Hi there and welcome to the Data Dojo podcast. I'm your host, Adam Massey. This week I'm joined by Yanir Seroussi. He basically runs his own consultancy firm, which helps a lot of different startups, particularly within the climate and nature tech space, and it helps them grow and scale successfully in the data, AI and ML space. So welcome to the podcast, Yanir. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Obviously, you've been speaking to you over LinkedIn. You've been on quite an exciting journey, setting up your own company. I guess what I wanted to do for people who don't know who you are is to basically get a bit of a background on your journey so far through the world of data and AI. Maybe give us a bit of an idea of what kind of companies you've worked for and what's kind of led you into this new role.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a bit older now. I'm in my 40s. And as the accent tell, I'm originally from Israel, and that's where I started my career. I did an undergrad in computer science, software engineering, and held software engineering positions with big tech companies, Intel and Qualcomm. And then I wanted to move to Australia, and a good way of doing it is to do a PhD, as you do. So that was in 2009, I started my PhD, and it was AI nominally, though it wasn't it was a different AI than these days, and not many people were talking about AI back then. It was AI, natural language processing, the sort of stuff that's all the rage these days.
What sort of year are we talking there?
2009 to 2012. So 2012 was when neural networks really started getting a lot of traction with all the deep learning stuff started really working. So I finished just before that, but I was still working on it. But 2012 was also the year of Harvard Business Review announcing that data scientist is the sexiest job of the 21st century. I think it lasted about 5 years rather than the whole century. But I finished my PhD, and the reason I did it was I wanted to do something that's more than just vanilla software engineering, and basically discover that I was a data scientist for what I've done, and got a data scientist job with a startup working in similar areas to what my PhD was on. It was in recommender systems. So back then it was around recommending gifts to people based on their Facebook profile. So if you're stuck on a gift idea, and so I was quite excited. I didn't want to stay in academia as well. I wanted to do more applied stuff. It did work, this switch from software engineering to data science, though I always remained in doing a lot of engineering roles, and since over the past decade plus, I've worked with various startups and scale-ups, and in sort of nominally it was data science, data engineering, machine learning engineering, the names of this stuff changes a lot, and a lot of these titles didn't exist back when I started. So there was a lot of discovery along the way of so you try to do the useful thing, and then suddenly it becomes a whole area, and suddenly everyone's recruiting for machine learning engineering. But it's I was doing that. So that's about it in terms of the long background, and in terms of my current focus. So I've worked with a lot of startups, and I've seen similar problems arise around the first data hire, first when they start trying to get started with AI, with machine learning. They often don't have the in-house capability. So they're bringing someone from the outside, and it's not, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So my thinking now is like focus on helping companies around that stage, and so help prevent expensive mistakes that I've seen made. So sort of like getting overexcited about AI prematurely, like before the company has enough traction.
Yeah.
Then you sometimes end up with hiring a full-timer or even a team, and then they don't really have much to do. It's not, so that's sort of like the broad focus in terms of like the capabilities.
Yeah. And I guess one thing I know, an area that you're really passionate about and that you've been trying to help people in, is that nature and climate area. What's kind of unique about that space, and what made you kind of focus on that?
So yeah, two things. I've always like really cared about nature. I'm a scuba diver. I enjoy the outdoors, and like you feel the need to preserve it when you see it up close, and when you care about it. And also like it's become more apparent in the past recent years that like climate change is one of the big problems that's affecting all aspects of nature. And for me, one of the biggest events where it was apparent was with the fires at the end of 2019. So at the time I was working with Automatic, the company behind WordPress.com. Like my day job was like doing machine learning stuff to like help optimize the product. The product wasn't about, still isn't, it's about WordPress hosting, and they have various other things in the WordPress ecosystem. So there's a lot of data, a lot of like interesting machine learning problems. But there was some activity internally to do more on sustainability. So I added to my full-time role a volunteer role to help them with quantifying the emissions from data center operation. And there was like some support internally to doing it. So with the quantification, did some offset buying, which also makes the company look good. But then I wanted to do more than that. So almost 3 years ago, I left with the goal of working on climate solutions full time. And it turns out that there's a lot of money going into the space. There's a lot of, there's two aspects to it. So there's with like climate in general, it's anything that leads to reduced carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest levers to pull is clean energy. So energy is a big space. Everyone needs energy. So, and governments are pouring a lot of money in incentives. So things like you could consider, say, Tesla, even like a climate tech company, like EVs are on the rise, various decarbonization of the grid. So yeah, so there is like work in the space, and on the nature side, there are a lot of initiatives for like conservation of biodiversity, because that's also depleting. So that's also starting to get more like solutions in the space. And one organization I joined in Australia is Climate Salad, and they try to like concentrate all the climate tech startups in Australia, and then now they have about 500 member companies. So, a lot of it is happening under the radar of like, the big enterprises.
Yes.
But but there is like a lot of activity, and it's just I think it's happening in any case. So it's an interesting area to be in, where you like there are interesting problems, and also it's contributing to stuff that overall does improve the well-being of everyone, because we all depend on the planet's ecosystems and life support systems continuing to function.
100%. I think when I speak to a lot of like data scientists or engineers, the big thing for them is that they get to a point in their career where they've probably worked at enterprises, done a lot of work around marketing campaigns and trying to sell products and all that kind of stuff, and understand a company's customers a lot better. But then they get to a point where they really want to kind of just, do something that they're passionate about, something that's going to create good in the world. And I think that's I think a journey that most people are going to be quite interested to hear about, because I think going out and stepping out on your own, setting up your own company after working at some quite big and large companies, which are very safe and secure. I guess I was interested to find out, how have you found that that change and that, having to build up new skills around building up your own brand, winning new work, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's been interesting because it wasn't so much my intention. So like I sort of like living automatic, I joined a local startup called Orchestra, and also there I started off as a contractor and was working on a machine learning project and helped them get it off the ground. But they had like two products, and that was more of a prototype that they ended up moving away from due to market condition and sort of like mothballing. And then I was like left with the choice of either sticking around and doing other work or going out and figuring it out on my own. And that was like about a year ago. And I was like, yeah, I'll get out and see what's out there. So my original thinking was around like just building my own like software company. So like because I'm sort of come from the software world, and there's a whole world as well of like people just building bootstrapping like companies, which requires like really finding a good problem that's underserved by the big companies. So you don't want to be competing with Microsoft or with Google. You want something that's like sort of small enough to not be interesting to a big company, but large enough to sustain a small company. So there was like a sweet spot for bootstrapping. And so I was looking at ideas in that space that are also like climate positive, and explored some ideas, but then I realized, yeah, I don't have like anything that I like sort of am ready to go all in on. And I was like, oh yeah, like one way of getting ideas and understanding the market is by doing consulting as freelancing. And yeah, I didn't really understand that there's like a difference, say, between consulting and freelancing and contracting and advising. And whereas now it's a lot clearer because I've been consuming a lot of advice on this space. I also chose like an interesting time to do it because of the market, like the tech market, and had a lot of layoffs, and the data work market is not what it used to be, say, 2-3 years ago. So it has been more challenging, and I'm hearing that from like other consultants and contractors that it's not the gold rush right now, though a lot of people are talking about AI. So but on the other hand, it's a bit of an opportunity, and so yeah, I'm sort of coming to realize that it is like a lot of long-term long-term investments in terms of networking, getting the word out there, doing the business development of talking to people. Because like, say, and also one big area of it, and that's like a recurring advice from anyone who's advising like soloists or like small consultancies, having some kind of niche. So data and AI is too big a niche. There's like Deloitte that also does data and AI consulting, so need some differentiator. And having all this startup experience and caring about climate tech is partly one of the things that I found like, yeah, this is a niche that I can care about and actually get access to the decision makers and genuinely serve well, given this niching bit was a bit of a thing I resisted, because you have this sort of like, oh, but will I say no to like an amazing opportunity? But then like, no, you don't necessarily say no, but focusing your marketing and your outreach on this sort of smaller target area is helpful. And yeah, it's like it's a challenge, but it's I'm sort of learning to embrace it. And yeah, it's not as safe and secure as getting all your regular salary, but there are, say, with layoffs in tech and market conditions, it's also not super secure to be reliant on one job and then say like, especially if you're in the same place for like 5-10 years, you don't network that much and things are stable, then like one day no, things change and there's just doing like massive layoffs and you're out and then you need to figure it out. So yeah, it's there's always some trade-off in what choices you make.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think you're doing the right thing in terms of focusing in on a niche area.
Mhm.
In the short term, you might feel like you're shutting the door on certain pieces of work,
Yeah.
but long term, you're going to build a brand and you're going to be that kind of go-to person for those particular areas around climate and the use of
Mhm.
AI within that space. So yeah, the vision long term is what you need to focus on. And like I said, the market is a little bit turbulent at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think, these things come and they go
Yeah.
in waves. So you'll be very well poised when things, do pick up again.
Mm.
I guess with the sort of startups that you've been working with recently, what have been the kind of biggest challenges they've been facing when trying to implement things like data, AI, or kind of any ML projects?
No, I think in like speaking in general terms, like a lot of the recurring themes are often having these big dreams around like, yeah, we're gonna do AI and it like looks good as a prototype, but then the reality of actually getting sustained business value out of it and dealing with the long tail of edge cases beyond like, okay, we've got a little thing that actually works is that's basically a recurring challenge. And sort of understanding that we've seen this like with traditional machine learning, the effort that it takes from just having, okay, like we have a model working on a data set offline and then actually running it in production and dealing with real world data that gets into it, and then things change, and like the cost of actually managing it within a big system, that is a recurring theme. And another one is just like the everyone would say that data quality sometimes, and that's all related to the dream of like of whether what you want to do can be supported by the data that you have. um, is and the goals, the say accuracy goals, is that's also always a challenge. It's hard to know from the outset, like something you need to sort of structure it in a way that you iteratively like go say do a small scope like exploratory project that will give you some answers about feasibility, and then um, dive deeper into it. So yeah, I would say data quality and the expectation of magic, and when in reality you do need a lot of effort to like get the value. And I think like finding in startups in particular, people tend like it's one advantage as a data practitioner in comparison to say bigger companies is that say you get to talk to the founders, and the founders really care about getting the value, the business value. Like the function of the value function is very short, whereas say if you go to like big enterprises, there's just political aspects to it that it's
Yeah.
sometimes like it might not be about like serving the end customer, but about like, oh, we need to do AI and we need to make our AI project look good, regardless of the value that it creates for the end user. So it's simpler in a way. But
Yeah.
then like the problem is, it's like, you really need to show the real value rather than, because the resources are much more constrained. So like
Yeah.
it's like a huge enterprise, like say CBA does like a $10 million mistake. It's like, whatever, like it's a rounding error. But if a an early stage startup does a $10 million mistake, then the company shuts down.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, different scales.
And the companies you work with, then you mentioned there, I think just earlier about the first hire within AI within the company. So I'm guessing then most of these companies that you do work with are kind of starting from the ground level in terms of trying to implement something like this, and maybe not even sure what kind of results they might yield from actually having this technology in place.
Yeah, and sometimes it is like say there's one company I'm about to work with that are around like the point of they've had scientists on the one hand building models and then engineer on the other side building engineering stuff, but nothing in the middle. So sometimes it's that of like the bridging the gap from actually like the like it's a data science. There's a lot of work that's done that's sort of like maybe mathematically advanced, but not production ready. So like bridging that gap and getting the reproducibility and best practices in, and sort of like getting like a review of like end to end of how can you make things work more smoothly. But yes, in some other cases it is like about like getting started. So yeah, it would depend on the case.
Yeah. I feel like it's a trap. When I first started recruiting data scientists like 8-9 years ago, when it was a huge buzz, it was like, I think felt like companies were like, yeah, we hire a data scientist, that's the answer to our problems, and they'll be able to, then we should then see a huge ROI. But it's obviously not that straightforward, and I think a lot of companies felt that and had to learn from that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and I think it wasn't helped by the fact that like a lot of like all the unis and various boot camps jumped on the bandwagon. So it used to be that data science was a rare, data scientists were rare, whereas now they're more of a commodity, and there's like a lot of disappointment, I think, because it doesn't tell you much if like a person is a data scientist, like whether they're business minded or not, and whether they have engineering skills or not, because a lot of people say came from the analytics side, and they might be very good with the data, but they're not very good at actually like productionizing. So and that's where often where the value will be, unless you have the engineering team to support like getting things into production,
making them work and actually getting them running. And I guess is there any kind of case studies or examples of some of the work you might have done recently with some of your startups that you'd like to have share with us?
I have like an example before that, like that's more like it was a longer term project, but it is like it was when I was working with Automatic, and we posted about it publicly, so it's
you're good to talk about.
Share. And it was basically around like getting machine learning to optimize email campaigns. So like optimize, decide what offers to send to whom, when, and that actually like suffered from some of these problems of like early on when the company started on data science. They hired a lot, like multiple people who came from the analytics side, and then I was the first one who came from the engineering side. So there were a lot of projects that didn't make it to production. It was like still exploratory. And then I partnered up with one of the data scientists who was working with marketing, and built a bunch of the initial models to drive these email campaigns. But then there was like a bit of a disconnect between like first running it on a regular basis, because the data keeps changing and you want to optimize it because like say people respond to stuff, so you want to learn from that. And also like for that specific company, they had like I believe they still do. They were running on like their own like infrastructure, like on-prem, not like AWS. So there were like a set of challenges around just like working with what you have, and doing the data work and getting something within those constraints. But then like another key aspect of that was just working with the people, and that like that's also a recurring theme, especially like just getting the buy-in for marketers to let machine learning do some marketing on
Yeah.
like instead of them doing it manually, and actually building the trust in the systems with that. And yeah, just getting the buy-in and continuously like building trust and experimenting, and that did like lead to eventually like millions of dollars in incremental revenue that yeah, and it's still running to this day. So that was like a lovely project, but it took years, like
Yeah.
literally, like and yeah, and that's the thing, like to the point of like yeah, expecting magic. It's not like the company got like a few data scientists and all was well. It's like the data scientists and data engineering work had to be done within the constraints of the company, and then had to manage expectations, get people to agree, um, and yeah, just like actually there's the aspect of continuous experimentation in production to keep optimizing things, because otherwise they just like they can deteriorate
Yeah.
if you don't run them effectively and actually look at what's happening. So yeah, and that's like yeah, it's still the case with say the large language model craze. I was just talking to like a guy who works at a big tech company, and he was like, yeah, it's like easy to get the prototypes in. It's easy to show that they're doing stuff,
Yeah.
but then dealing with a long tail of edge cases and then having that translate to actually like the business metrics that matter, which at the end of the day are connected to revenue, either like increasing retention, reducing churn, like increasing spend. Like it's a long path, like no matter how fancy your models are.
Yeah.
So and yeah, and it does like require working with the people, both like the humans who are the end users of the product and the ones within the organization who like basically need to give you the support you need to push stuff and experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I mean, you hinted to it there. There's a huge amount of hype around AI at the moment. We've talked about sort of the role of the data scientist and the fact that I guess the evolution is that you need to kind of have an understanding of how to get things into production, or be
Yeah.
able to kind of build teams which have the right level of balance between engineering and analytics. So how do you feel the impact of AI is having on IT and data professionals at the moment and the roles that they do?
No, I think there is definitely like a lot of stuff has become easier, like stuff that like a whole class of problems first, like in computer vision, there was just like a bunch of things that were hard to do that are now way easier. And then in language problems, or like there's been a bit of like some people who have been working deeply on some of these problems had a bit of a crisis where like they were trying to do something for years, and then GPT-4 came along and
Yeah.
it just does it out of the box.
Yeah.
There was like a story about like I think from Bloomberg a few years ago, like they built an AI on Bloomberg articles, and it was like giving answers and stuff about like financial news, and then GPT-4 gave better answers out of the box. So it was, and that took like a team of like 10 people to like build the specific models and get to production and all that. So yeah, there's definitely like, it's not all hype. Like these things do
Yeah.
work and work well, and they make a lot of stuff easier. So I would like be wary of just like dismissing them as hype, because you need to like, but that sort of has been my experience in like data science in general, even before like the latest wave of AI. So I wrote like post about it a few years ago of like just like say you get a lot of these software machine learning platforms, like machine learning offerings from AWS and GCP, like they automate all aspects of the work, and those and or there are just like open source software packages that just automate aspects of the work that used to take like a really long time.
Yeah.
Like say things that took me months when I was doing my PhD are now like just a few lines of code and you're done. So it really is like you can't just stay put and assume that like you keep doing the same things that you were doing before, and like do like one thing that AI tools are having an impact on is just the way code is written, that you can either like when you're designing a solution, like talk to ChatGPT or one of the other AIs as sort of a sparring partner to just do the brainstorming and give you, say, starter code. And often it would be like not great, but it still saves you time.
Yeah.
And but then the other aspect of it is like the job itself was never all about code or all about building models. It's like a lot of the skills that still remain critical are like around working with people and choosing the right problems to work on, and building the trust and relationships either externally or internally to get stuff shipped and keep your stakeholders happy, whether they are like your consulting clients or your internal clients or product teams or anything, like whatever environment you're working on, you're essentially working with people. So it does help. It's not necessarily like always doing perfect work, but it's like managing the expectations is a big part of it, of like being, okay, this is hard, but I can look into it and let's do this style. Are you okay with it? Like just sort of basics of communication make a big difference to like to like whether you're successful in terms of like at least the perception of success. Because it's like, those, you can be doing great work, but then like if no one knows about it, say within your company, you're also like, you might not be perceived as successful, and that's also not a great position to be in. So these things still matter even as AI is making a lot of tasks much easier.
Yeah, and I think it's the age-old thing. I think having good communication skills and working on those as well as your technical skills is really important for anyone who's in a technical role, and then being able to kind of take that next step to understand the business and try and develop that business acumen, because you need to be quite well-rounded, and that's where you're going to have the most value and add the most value. So I guess what you mentioned sort of around some tooling and things like that. What do you consider to be the most important when selecting sort of data, AI, or ML tools for platforms and projects? Or do you feel like there's maybe too much emphasis on what those look like?
Well, I think like some of the emphasis is coming from the vendors rather than from people who are like actually working on it. Because like a lot of us especially once you've been in the space for a while, you get a bit jaded because there's all these like, you keep getting shiny tools and like pushed on you, and there's just not enough time to like even catch up on the tools. And then when you start working with them, you hit all the limitations. So I'd say that like one of the big things is just figuring out what's already in place in terms of companies. So like I said, with say Automatic, they had like a pretty unusual setup with the whole on-prem and like a big like PHP and MySQL backend, and like the you could run Python code, but it was like only in like specific areas. So like just figuring out what's possible within the constraints that you have, like within the constraints of the projects in terms of like cost, the data privacy, like time frame, and also the team capabilities. So like, because like if you're going beyond the prototype, then it really matters like the maintenance and the total cost of ownership. So if you introduce some new tool that no one else knows how to use, or then either like it needs to have like a really good good reason to be introduced, or if you can really, or it might be a bit more effort to use the existing stack and existing infrastructure and maybe some more custom work, but then like things will get maintained, then it's also it's more of a win. But sometimes tools, like new tools, do save a lot of time. So you need to sort of still stay on top of them and find out which ones are the good ones. And
Yeah.
sometimes it just means waiting a little bit and seeing what other people are saying about it.
Yeah.
So, so like it doesn't always pay to be an early adopter. But yeah, in general, just getting the job done quickly and sort of incrementally showing value is an important aspect. And yeah, and also related to my previous point about like not getting attached to the way you've done things in the past, because it's like really, I often like if I start a new project, I would look at like, okay, how are people, even if it's a problem similar to what I've done in the past, be like, how are people tackling this problem right now?
Mm.
And it could be, sometimes it is like this thing of like, yeah, I could do it in the old way and it will take me a few months, but given the constraints and given this new tooling, I can actually do it in much less time. And in this, like, and in this case, the new tooling is acceptable to the current stack. So yeah, it really is, yeah, dependent on context and what's become available, because yeah, you can't just like shut off everything that's new just because it comes with a lot of hype. And
Yeah.
yeah,
That's cool. And I guess, what do you see is happening over the next few years with the evolution of the AI and ML space?
well, it's very hard to predict. I think
Yeah.
like to be honest, like say with the release of ChatGPT, and despite knowing about like GPT-3 before that, and like knowing that like yeah, it's these language models are getting better, like playing with ChatGPT when it came out, when it was like November 2022, it was really felt transformative in the way that Google felt transformative when
Yeah.
I first did the Google search. So yeah, there's these surprises, and it's like, and that was like full really tweaks to existing technology. So they can yeah bring surprises. So um, I think in principle, everything that we do can basically like the jobs can be automated, like at least the job activities. It's like it's really hard to like put a timeline on things. So say like if you look at self-driving cars, like people have been they felt imminent about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
but yet in Australia we still don't see self-driving cars on the road. They're only like now getting more traction I'm hearing in San Francisco and in the US. So that might be in the coming 10 years. And yeah, it's like, I think between the demo and the real world uses, there's like a very long gap of
Yes.
adoption. So I think like, yeah, for in general, if you're in the field and you feel like behind, like can keep in mind that like some places are still behind on just the digital revolution, and there are like still paper forms out there, so there will still be work, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very, I think, definitely like say if you look 50 to 100 years ahead, like we will see like rapid automation, and I'm like pro free time for humans.
Yeah.
Like it will get to a point of like, yeah, we don't really need to do any work. But yeah, I think it's like shorter term, we'll keep seeing these surprises, and I think we're probably due for a bit of a burst of like the AI bubble, because there's just like a lot of money pouring into it,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna like the gains probably won't be realized quickly.
Yeah.
Like there's like this Goldman Sachs paper that's been making the rounds around like just all these infrastructure companies buying a lot of GPUs and like investing in data centers, but people aren't building AI like stuff that like is generating enough business value to justify all these data centers.
Yeah.
So the cost of using these computers will go down, which will lead to more AI innovation, because
Yeah.
but yeah, there will be like ups and downs for sure. But I think like yeah, we're really just at the beginning. Like
It's so early, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, because if you see like say the whole ChatGPT and other large language models, it's like it's really not like it's sophisticated algorithms, but a lot of it just comes from training them on like huge amounts of data. And there's still like so much data that isn't being captured, like say in the actual real world. It seems like we do have like we as a society the brains are sort of there, the computation power is there, but then if you feed more real world data into this algorithm, like say have robots that are helping you around the home, they will get incrementally better, but there's like the barrier of entry to having like a safe robot at home versus like a a chatbot is
Yeah.
very different. So yeah, but yeah, I'm sure like we'll just see a lot more like mind-blowing stuff in the coming decades.
And we won't expect it. If you rewind in like 10, 15 years, we'll look back and go, wow, we didn't see that coming. We always see something left field that happens that completely transforms everything and the way people go.
Yeah. Like people are comparing like, say, we're kind of in the early iPhone days of AI now, of the generative AI stuff, where it's like in 2007, 2008, 2008, it wasn't clear like what businesses will be built on mobile, but then like now we have Uber, Airbnb, like all these things that we don't even think about that we do on our phone. That's like, yeah, it's really changed the world in terms of like, yeah, a lot of aspects of the way we live our lives. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we just can't imagine yet that will, yeah, as you said, will take us by surprise. So exciting times ahead.
Exciting. And I guess for those that want to get in touch with you, what's the kind of best way to reach out to you and maybe understand what it is that you do with your business? Or if you're a business owner, what's the best way to sort of start a conversation with you?
Yeah, either contact me on LinkedIn. I look at all my connection requests and respond to them, especially if they come with a note. And or either on my website, it's yanirseroussi.com, like so first name, last name.com, and there's like a contact email there and everything. So yeah, happy to chat with anyone really in the industry. Like it's good to like hear from people and yeah.
And I think for anyone out there, who doesn't already, I think just I'll add your LinkedIn profile in on the show notes. Just go and follow Yanir. Yanir's always putting out really, really good content, really interesting articles, really interesting insights in the AI and ML community. So yeah, make sure you follow him and reach out to Yanir with any kind of questions you have, and I'm sure he can help.
Oh, thank you, Adam.